Utah politics.
Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Glenn Mills. It is time to go inside Utah politics. We do begin this morning with State Senator Mike McKell, here to discuss the push for oversight of the troubled teen industry nationwide. Senator, great to have you on the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Let's start off with Utah law. This is something you passed last year, I believe.
Yeah, 2 years ago, and we did an update last year.
Gotcha. Okay. So where it stands now, give us a summary of that.
So right now, Senate Bill 127 is fully implemented. One of the important things we did is we actually added additional funding. We have new investigators on the ground. We made some important moves with that bill. We limited the type of restraints that can be used. We added enhanced reporting. We've had good success. We do have some good programs in Utah. We have found a number of concerns, and reporting doesn't necessarily mean there's problems. The important thing is we have transparency. We're finding those issues that have happened in the past, and I think we're seeing a lot of positive on the ground today.
You got in touch with Paris Hilton on this. She experienced a teen facility here in the state of Utah. First off, talk about how you came in contact with her and how her story inspired the change here in our state.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. The short version is it was an issue I was concerned about. I'm a practicing attorney. I had a family member and another coworker beat up in a facility. Started researching the issue, called some other attorneys, learned that we really do have lax oversight. We do have a really serious problem in Utah. At the same time, Paris came to Utah. They held a rally at Provo Canyon School, and we were connected at that point. I had a bill file open and ready to go, and at that point we had a chance to work on the issue together.
Late last year, we had you and Paris and others in for a special town hall edition of our newscast where we talked about this. We also had one other state senator from the state of Oregon. So is this something that states across the country are dealing with, or is this kind of limited at this point?
So right now, most states across the country do have some facilities. We have the most in the state of Utah, but there are facilities across the state. We have all sorts of jurisdictional issues when we bring in kids from California, bring in kids from Colorado, bring in kids from Oregon. That's the concern. That's why we're working on some federal legislation. I think we need to have enhanced transparency across the nation because of the jurisdictional issues that we face.
And you recently traveled to D.C. to work on exactly that. Talk about your trip. What was done and what was the purpose?
Yeah, great question. We did a successful trip. The purpose was to introduce legislators, members of Congress to the concept and to really identify the need for federal legislation. There are some issues that I'm still concerned about. I'm concerned how we transport kids across state lines. That's interstate commerce. That's something that is rightfully something that Congress should address. That's a federal issue. We also have interstate marketing. These kids, they are marketed in a way that we push them across state lines. That's something we need to look at. And then we need to look at the appropriateness of treatment with the federal dollars that are used. I think we had a successful trip. We met with a number of members of Congress. There's a lot of bipartisan support in D.C. to take some action. I don't think there's a bill released at this point, but it's in the works.
Okay, I want to dig into that a little bit more, but I want to hit on something you just said as well. The state-to-state transportation.
Right.
For example, again, turning to Paris Hilton, she was living in California, and she explains it as being kidnapped in the middle of the night and driven to the state of Utah. That's what you're talking about there.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about. That still happens today. Kids are woken up in the middle of the night. There are kids that are handcuffed. They're taken across state lines. We have one of the things we did in our legislation is we're identifying those transport companies that work with the state of Utah, and I think that's helpful. But there are jurisdictional issues when it comes to transport, and there's a lot of kids crossing those state lines. So there needs to be oversight, not just in the state of Utah with what we're doing, but across the nation to make sure that it's done in an appropriate way.
Okay, back to the D.C. trip. Who were you able to meet with, and how did that go?
So we met with a lot of members of Congress, dozens of members of Congress, both from the Republican side as well as the Democratic side. We really focused on the Republican committee members that would see a bill on the Business and Commerce Committee. I think it was a very successful trip. We also had a rally and a press conference. I got to meet with a number of survivors, families who have lost children in facilities, and a really powerful trip.
So we've mentioned Paris Hilton. Obviously, she has a huge stage, a huge following, so a lot of tension is centered around her story. But you just mentioned that you met other survivors as well. Talk about their stories and the impact they have on you and other lawmakers.
I think their stories were powerful. I met a family from Vermont. They had a daughter in a program in Florida, and she was very sick for an extended period of time, and due to medical negligence, and in my view, she ended up passing and did not receive appropriate medical care. And I got to meet with that family, met with another family, very similar circumstance with medical neglect. They lost a son as well. Just since our own laws passed, Glenn, even in the state of Utah, we had a story break just recently. A facility was revoked with allegations of medical negligence. It happens in these facilities, and when it happens, it's tragic. But we need to make sure the oversight is there. And it was powerful. These families met with members of Congress as well and told their stories, and I think it was very helpful. I think it was eye-opening. Most members of Congress didn't realize how large this industry actually is and what the purpose of the industry was. And I think it was eye-opening for a lot of those folks in D.C.
Having successfully sponsored and passing a bill here in the state of Utah, what role do you see yourself playing on the federal level, and what example will Utah's law potentially be as a federal standard?
So I think my role, and one of the reasons I was asked to come back is it's rare that as a Republican we're asking for federal intervention, but we want the federal government to be involved when there is interstate commerce. That's squarely within the Constitution, and to have a Republican back there say, look, we dealt with it in our state, but it's not enough. We need to take additional steps. That was the importance of my role back there, both from a Republican perspective. We had a state senator from Oregon as well, asking for some federal involvement because of the complexity of the issue. We have a host of jurisdictional issues that can't simply be resolved in the state of Utah, unfortunately.
Yeah. So would a federal law look similar to Utah's, or would it need to be completely different?
Right now, the federal law and the concept is to have a Bill of Rights for folks in programs, as well as a transparency board to look at the issues in general. I would hope that the things that we did in Utah would be adopted across the nation. What we adopted were best practices in industry standards. We dealt with seclusion, we dealt with restraint, we dealt with reporting. We made sure that there's appropriate funding so we can be in these facilities and make sure these kids are actually protected. The model that we follow here in Utah, I hope it's a model other states can look towards, and I hope it's a model the federal government can look towards. But the issue with the federal government that I think is difficult, that needs to be addressed, is jurisdictional. We have really difficult jurisdictional issues because kids are marketed across state lines and kids are transported across state lines. And if there's a problem, who is the appropriate agency? Who steps in? Who resolves the problem? And that does involve that interstate commerce in the federal government.
Okay, we have a few seconds left, but I also wanted to hit on the fact that you said a lot of doors were open in this trip to D.C. Talk about that.
A lot of doors were open. I mean, to me, it's still remarkable that I worked with somebody like Paris Hilton, came to Utah to tell her story. Doors are open to her in a way that is unique. I'm grateful that she came to Utah and helped work on this issue, and quite frankly, I'm grateful she still continues to use her voice to work on it. It's a big issue. There's a lot of need, and I think the more good voices working together, the better.
All right, Senator, appreciate your time, and we will follow this as you and others continue to work on a national level. Thanks so much for being here.
Perfect. Thank you.
Coming up, another mass